Super. So we've had a look at that we've got 6% in the team. Remember, that's across all denominations. And I don't know how much you work, again, with other people and in unity. It's always good where we can on some of these things to get all the, everyone together, because we suddenly realised what a sizable group we are. We've realised in London we're about 10% are practising Christian. And that is actually, which is amazing, which means you've got a cultural forming group. And we are always reacting to culture. And we need to realise that as Christians, we could be cultural forming, not just culturally reactive. And that's a very important thing for us to look at as a group altogether. Great. So what questions might people be asking? We had a little look at this. One of our partners was Alpha. And so we looked particularly at the Alpha questions. And you'll see from this that none of the above at 22%, we didn't exactly get all of these right. But what we discovered was that our questions resonated more with a younger age bracket, probably because Alpha have particularly targeted a younger generation. And so there was a certain age point at which you cease to ask, what should I do with my life? And so that's what is reflected in those percentages. But will everything be okay resonated across all the different generations? Because there is this wobble factor that's going on in the world. So we came out of the pandemic. We've got a war. We're an economic crisis. People's worlds have wobbled. And so they're not sure that how they thought their life was going to run, it is how it's going to run. So there is obviously higher, and as you know, there's a higher levels of anxiety within our culture and society. And then if you look at 13% of what happens when you die, that's actually a question that we need to examine. We really have an answer for that, but that resonated across the generations. So lots of people don't know what's going to happen when they die, or they may have a hazy idea about it. But we would love, wouldn't you love it, if everybody in the UK got the opportunity at least once with the UK, at least once to know actually that they could have the assurance of Jesus for eternity. I'm quite kind of passionate about it. I feel we've sort of lost eternity. We're doing really, really well at things like social justice. We need to not step back from it. It's important. But if we just become a movement about people's lives here and now, we are selling them short. We are selling them short. Because the big thing that really matters is actually not the here and now. It's the future now. And that's eternity. So we would sell them short. And I really feel that we've got to rediscover that. And we need to get passionate again about proclaiming the eternity, talking about what happens when you die. So my lovely friend, her mother was dying in a hospice, and she was in one room, and then the room opposite, there was another poor lady dying in the hospice. And my friend, she was going in, her children were going in, all the different people from the church were going in. There was this flow of people in and out. And then nobody was visiting the other room, which they began to notice. So she popped across to have a little chat. And then her daughter, who would come and knit by Granny, would go and knit by this other woman. And the other woman said, I don't really know what's happening. And she said, I've been told I'm in end-of-life care. Does that mean I'm dying? She's like, someone needs to be honest here, don't they? Yes. She said, none of my family will visit me. They seem to be afraid. They don't want to come in. And I'm all alone and I'm terrified. So slowly, my friend was able to help her, and she brought her to Jesus. She had the courage to take a risk. I am just going to go for this. And she shared Jesus with this dying woman. The woman came to faith resoundingly and discovered the joy and peace of Jesus before she slipped off into eternity. This is the UK. Should anybody not have that opportunity to have got all that way through life and nobody had ever talked to her about Jesus? I'm like, oh my word, I might expect that in some countries, but I don't expect it here. And it's so powerful and it's so beautiful. And I feel like that again is why I'm so excited about the Alive series, is because we discuss life and death and eternity. So we just did week 2 in and my word, this wonderful woman, Claire, who helps us with all the questions. They're fantastic. So week 1, we had really deep conversations. Week 2, we were on life and death, what happens when you die. And it was amazing to have that, if you like, that chance at that conversation. Things like death cafes have sprung up in our space. And I don't mind that somebody else is doing that, but why don't we as the church do that? They're actually quite popular. The people will go to discuss death because they haven't got anywhere else to do it. So, we need to look at what can we do that enables people to have deep conversations about the things that really matter. Lots of people really want that. So they're either going to go to the internet or they're going to find a secular equivalent. And we as the church have the greatest thing on offer. And often we have this, I don't know, we don't want to offend anybody. So in that, where we've stepped back, other people are stepping in. And so we need to regain that confidence because we have such an offer, don't we? Such an offer. There we are. So that's on questions. And we need to do a little bit more work. Because we've been doing something just before, we won't stop again. We'll come back to some of the questions in a minute. So then we want to look about one of the best things that we know about helping people come to faith is the conversations that you and I might have with somebody on the bus or the train or our friend over a pizza, wherever it is, or in the bowls club, wherever it is that we meet people. How are the conversations going? So we're now zoning in on, if you remember that big section, we're zoning in on the non-Christians again, the people who are not Christian, not the non-practicing Christians. We're zoning in on the non-Christians. And I'll reflect on the non-practicing Christians because they're a big segment also of your mission. So the non-Christians, how many of the people who are not a Christian know a practicing Christian? And 53% of the non-Christians know a Christian. Now, this is the biggest alarm bell from 2015 to 22. That's my best impression. And the reason is it's gone down from 68% to 53%. It's the impact of the pandemic. It's the impact on the pandemic of the fringe of our churches, often what we might call the fringe. So basically, we all got locked in and our lives got smaller and our social settings got smaller. I want to re-measure this one to see if we've managed to get back out again or if we've stayed in. More people than ever now working from home. You won't meet somebody because you're working from home. You have a Zoom meeting. We all know that on a Zoom meeting, you don't ask somebody about what they did at the weekend because you've actually come into a Zoom meeting. There's 5 of you. You have to get on with the agenda. Whereas if you'd gone to a meeting, you mill around a bit first and you find out a little bit about that person and maybe what they did at the weekend. Do you see? So what's happened is the reach of Christians has shrunk because we are meeting less people who don't know Jesus. And so in 2015, we didn't need to address it, but in 2022, we do. And we need to look at how to re-extend our reach and what we might need to do to engage with people who are not Christians. Does that make sense? So we haven't got as many natural pockets of places to invite or to have those conversations in. So we, as the missionary, the onus is on us as the missionary to be missional and to go to new spaces and places. Rather than, well, those people just, somehow they're going to have to get to us. So we've got a bigger task than we had in 2015 when it comes to connection. Great. And they know us really well. We're their family and we're their friend. So these relationships are close. These are often people they're close to. So we have a really good reach and we're close to them, but it's just a bit shrunk since 2015. What do they think about us? So on your tables, if you had watched a sitcom, what would the Christian be like in the sitcom? If you've watched one recently or something on Netflix, if there's a Christian at all? Just think about the stats for a minute. 51% of the population in the UK say they're a Christian. 51% of the people portrayed in any drama that is in the UK should be Christian. Is that happening? Netflix, if we dared to look at the American stats on the numbers of Christians, what percentage would be Christian in America? Way higher. How many turn up on a Netflix drama? We've been whitewashed out. But when we are there, what do we look like? Have a little chat around your table. So when they do put us in, so it's again interesting, isn't it? In culture, we whitewashed out. Might be portrayed as a typical Christian on a sitcom. But we were just having a great conversation on what the impact of the pandemic on stats and numbers. And I did do a piece of research on that. So if you want to know more, We can do that another time on how many people left the church, how many joined the church, and what difference it is. But the people who left were often more on the fringes of our church. They didn't read their Bibles, they didn't pray, because we did a piece of research. So that's why that number held true. If people were able to spiritually feed themselves and sustain themselves as a stronger disciple of Jesus, they made it through the pandemic. And if they were more on the fringes of faith and weren't as strong as a disciple and hadn't learned how to, if you like, spiritually feed themselves, then they're some of the people that we lost. So again, we definitely saw that. We did a piece of research. I did it with the Church of England, and we looked at basically the spiritual habits of the people who stayed and the spiritual habits of the people who left. And we could see that difference, and people joined us. So we also had a whole group who joined us because we went online and did one of the biggest missionary movements we'll ever see in the UK by going online, because we basically went to inhabit the culture of the people, and they were all online because they had nothing else to do. And so they met us and we met them. And so we had quite a few different things happening. We engaged missionally really well by going online, and people joined us. But the people who left us had less ability. They were less discipled. And so, and those who stayed were more strongly discipled. There you go. So that was our little chat. Blah, 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 blah. You email me, because it's definitely somewhere in the Church of England, but I did it when I was there, as I left and then came over and led Hope. So I did it with them. So Emma and I did it, and I need to dig it out. But worth having. So it looks at all of what was happening during the pandemic, the influence of going online, and what was happening with who left and who joined. But really interesting. So yeah, that was what Bill and I were doing. So great, another little I love research. Tell me what you think the typical Christian would be portrayed in the media. Any words? Yeah, great. Okay, fab. That's a great summary. Basically, we're always the most positive, are we, when portrayed in Christian media? But when we asked the UK what they thought about the Christian person that they knew, what traits would they say? They love us. They think we're friendly and caring. And I love the fact the next two are generous and good-humoured. Love that we're good-humoured people. Absolutely great. So that's how we should be being portrayed. Do you see? So that's how and remember, this is the non-Christians. This is what the non-Christians think of their practicing Christian friend or family member. They really like us. This slide I found really helpful. So another way, there's different ways of helping you get this out into your church ether. You can run the Talking Jesus course, which is available online on the Talking Jesus website. Or you can just grab any of these stats. The PowerPoint is there, and you could maybe drop a couple in, even on a Sunday morning. So sometimes that works really well. Just, hey, we're just going to do one more stat from this. This statistic, I love it, because everybody goes, you know that withering, they do the opposite. Oh, if I say I'm a Christian, people are going to like me. Great. They're still going to like me. It's okay. It's safe for me to say to someone, I'm an active Christian. And they're going to go, oh, great, yeah, that makes sense. That's why you're the person on the street that I would come to for sugar, or because I suddenly need to go to hospital. And I know that you're the person who will get out your car and take me. We have a great reputation. I'm just going to say that again. We have a great reputation. Isn't that exciting? Really exciting.
Rachel, do you mind if I share something quickly?
Yeah. Get great.
I don't really know about it, really. Probably don't watch it. Hollyoaks is a great example of how they're portraying church to be at the minute. It's about our sexuality element of it. And there's two there, leader of the church and another to bring up.
Yeah.
What they're having clubs, and they're bringing people who feel there are homosexual.
Yeah.
She's a serious important and need to set away.
Yes. Yeah. It's brutal. Yeah, it is brutal. And that's the problem, isn't it? It's like, so there's this whole thing of who is in control, and who is shaping, and who's shaping our reputation.
And I see the devil in that.
Yeah, and who's choosing the headline on Easter Sunday? You know, who is... and the problem is, what happens is all of us in the church, we just go, oh. You know, and it's just not the truth. And that's why this is really important, because when you put this up, The truth does what? Sets us free. And that's why I'm so committed to it. I mean, I don't mind how many times I present it, I'm really committed to it because it sets people free. And I feel we've been lied to, and we know who the father of lies is. And he will use, I think we forget that. We're not in a polite situation fighting for the life of our country. We're not in a polite situation making sure that everyone has had a chance to hear about Jesus before they die. The enemy will not be polite. Do you see? He will use everything he's got to make sure that as many people as he can don't make it. And so we just have to it's like wise up a bit, isn't it? Wise up a bit. And then, we just need to, so it's like it is, we need to find our confidence and our passion and our strength again. And, but what you will find is that when you are out there, people, they've got someone that they know who they like, who's a Christian. That's a great start. Often if you ask people, do you know someone who's a practicing Christian? The other really interesting thing is people said to me, oh, well, all the 18 to 24-year-olds have a granny. It's not, it's one of their friends. So nearly all of these relationships of practicing Christian the non-Christian knowing a practicing Christian are peer. So I can see that really clearly. If you look at a data table, you can see it, peer, because we ask on the age of that person. It's peer, 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 peer. It's all their peers. And so we're mostly engaging evangelistically in peer age relationships. I was on the bus the other day and it was great. I could hear a Christian girl talking to a non-Christian girl behind me. It was cracking. It was just great. It was just great to listen. And this conversation, she goes, well, oh, my mum's like, you're just always out. You need to be in more. She said, oh, yeah. She said, oh, yeah, my mum says that as well. She said, I'm just always at church. And my mum is like, can you just stop going to church? She's like, so one girl was out going pubs and parties, and the other girl, I'm just always at church. And goes, oh, yeah, well, my mum's always complaining because I'm out. Well, I just love church. It's so great. I don't want to not go to church. I'm like, this is a great conversation. I should be recording this over my shoulder. And they were having this hilarious conversation about their mothers complaining they were always out. But one was all about church and one was all about lots of other things. But she was a big job. Sing job. And she was in that. And obviously they got on really well and they liked each other really well. She was doing amazing. And then I think I overheard another one. Where was that? I was sitting out at a cafe and there was an older guy talking to another, and he was talking all about church. Yeah, well, I know I can't come that night because I've got my Bible study group. I'm like, go for it. So loads of this is happening. We're just not always there on the bus, do you see? Or, outside the cafe when it's happening. So they like us. There is a problem. Here's the problem. Not so keen on the church as an institution. That is where the hypocritical, narrow-minded comes in. Can you see? It's not the individual, it's the institution. And this is a bit of a cultural issue as well at the moment. If I asked you, what about your local MP? Amazing. We love our local MP. They do so much for the community. If I asked people about the politicians in general, absolute rogues, all of them, a disaster. So what it is we can work, we're just a bit, I don't know, it's just something about the human mind. We like the person that we know, but we are wary of a big institution. So the big institution cannot do the job of evangelism. It will not be trusted, but the local and the person that I know and the relational is where that needs to happen.
Can I ask a question about that data? Is there a difference in Asia and Africa for institution?
There will be, but it wasn't so dramatic, actually. Interestingly, I think it's just that kind of idea has got right the way through the ether. Now, yeah. But if you ask a non-practicing Christian, they'll be more positive. And I don't think I did all of those slides particularly for Northern Ireland, because that is that they haven't really got very many non-Christians. Nearly everybody, because of the political situation, is a cultural Christian of some description. So we had to look at a different mission field. So it comes out better, so that the northern 51% of people who tick Christian will have a better view of the church. They will have so half of your target audience will have a better view of the church than the non-Christian. But I haven't got that, so I should have pulled that slide out for you.
Ross Calloway, so I like my local and
yes,
in my layout.
Yes.
Aristotle's work.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same. So it's exactly the same phenomenon, which means why, people are not less likely to trust the big voice. They're less likely to trust Justin Welby, but they will trust you, or maybe, again, I think even their local vicar, they're going to have more, you're actually going to have more opportunity. So it's really interesting. We have more opportunity on a local level than we do but we can't leave this to like, oh, the big voice of the Church of England somehow is going to do this. That isn't going to work. It's just going to sound non-authentic. But you, as an individual in your locality who runs the food bank, are going to sound so much more authentic. So it really is our task. So what it helps people to earth it in like, actually, this is our task. We then asked the non-Christian if they'd had a conversation with that Christian. 55% of the non-Christians, remember this is the furthest away group, have had a conversation with that practicing Christian. So, hey, people, we're talking. The girl on the bus, the guy outside the cafe, my mother in Morrison's. So this was a big shock to a lot of church leaders. Okay? Because they just thought nobody was having conversations. But the point is they weren't on the bus, in the cafe or in Morrison's. So my mother, pre-pandemic, she used to go to the same cash desk in Morrison's on the same day. She's a woman of routine, at the same time. But she'd actually strategically worked it out because the woman who was on shift was the same woman. And so she built a relationship with that woman. And when that woman hit crisis, it was my mother who she turned to for prayer. And she had all she had in her handbag was her Bible reading notes. So she gave her Every Day with Jesus. The woman had read them all in 1 week. By the time she got back the following week, like 3 months worth, and said, have you got anything else for me? Now, that woman hasn't made it to church. So on a church leader's radar, does that count? Do you see the problem? So what you need to find out is like doing something like the Talking Jesus course. It's just encouraging people. You know, we are all seed planters and we don't know at which point those seeds will grow or germinate or what will happen. But the Morrison's conversation is really worth. I remember we did this course as a life group some time ago. One girl was saying, well, I took my car into the garage for an MOT and somehow she ended up talking to the garage mechanic. Then the other person had arrived with their car and they ended up with quite a large conversation all about spiritual things. And she was able to talk about Jesus all in the garage when she took the car in for an MOT. If I hadn't asked, I wouldn't have known that had happened. Do you see? And I might have assumed that nobody was talking about their faith. Whereas I think you'll find when you lift the lid, sorry, we're still on the MOT thing, but when you lift the lid, that actually there's probably more of this happening than we realise. And that statistic tells us that there's more of it happening than we realise. There's still a good chunk of people who still need to know. Then we asked the practicing Christians, do you remember we had that oversample at the beginning? We asked them about this. But remember, these are the people who are regularly part of a worshipping community, regularly reading their Bibles and regularly praying. They're our team. 75% of them felt it was their responsibility to talk. And 77% said they felt comfortable talking to non-Christians about Jesus Christ. But 40%, so 57% felt they were able to answer difficult questions, but 40% felt they couldn't. And 54% felt they did know people well enough to talk to them, but 42% felt they didn't know anybody well enough. So let's unpack these last two. 40%, this was particularly true in the younger generations. They were struggling with the difficult questions. And the reason is they're going to get much more difficult questions than anybody else because the subjects in their culture that they are dealing with are big. And I feel that so we work closely with the EA. The EA's material on being human. So if you've got young adults who are struggling on how to articulate and speak into some of the really difficult topics that we're currently having to deal with, you know, in the middle of a pub conversation, then the being human material from the EA is the most helpful that I have found to help that younger generation. And then this one, there's 42% of us who don't know anybody well enough. So that correlates, do you remember, that correlates to that shrinking fringe. And so it's really a simple message for that, isn't it? Join Pilates or something. I don't mind what it is, but join something where you get to hang out with people who don't yet know Jesus. So that's a really simple solution on that one. Great. When we do talk, what do people think? What do the non-Christians, and remember this is our furthest away group, what do the non-Christians say in response? 75% of the non-Christians felt comfortable in that conversation. Well done, church. There are people like my mother in Morrison. She's not the slightest bit terrifying. She didn't have a big Bible and she didn't shout. Do you see what I mean? So again, that's stereotypical of when people are talking. Most of us are really good at this, which is really interesting because a lot of church leaders think nobody's any good at it. But actually, the non-Christians are telling us they were comfortable. So this isn't, people are not being weird or aggressive. They're really comfortable in that conversation. But only 22% felt they were missing out on our faith. So that's a bit low. 73% felt like their lives were fine, thank you. But, but 36% were open to an experience or encounter with Jesus. Just going to say that again. You might go, that's a bit low, Rachel. Wish it was the 55%. But it's 36% of the non-Christians having had a conversation with a Christian and chosen to remain a non-Christian, remember? So, for example, I'm a banana milkshake saleswoman, all of a sudden, and I've come along to sell banana milkshakes to these 5 people here in the front row. And I'm going to give you banana milkshakes, and I'm going to tell you that it's the most wonderful experience, and you should really be a banana milkshake drinker. Now, you two are so overwhelmed by the banana milkshake experience that you join me, and you become banana milkshake salesman. I'm afraid you 3, it's just not for you, but there's a sort of varying degree of banana milkshake experience. I come along with a market research, and I want to talk to non-banana milkshake drinkers who've had a conversation or tasted a banana milkshake with a banana milkshake enthusiast. And then I ask them how that went. But the group of people who have joined me will not be now being asked in the market research. So they need a different set of questions. So actually what we do is ask them separately. Now, obviously, the people who have come to join the banana milkshake, are you still following me? Have I lost you? The people who joined the banana milkshake club, obviously, if I ask you, how was the banana milkshake experience? You're going to be
Fabulous.
Fabulous. Great. Good. Phew. Well done, John. Love the enthusiasm. And the non-banana milkshake drinkers, yeah, maybe ice cream could be improved with a bit more whipped cream. Great. Okay. So we've talked to non-Christians who've had a conversation with a Christian who've chosen to remain a non-Christian. Which group am I talking to? And then I've asked them how the conversation went. And then 36% of them have said, I'm open to an experience or encounter with Jesus Christ. Well, that's quite exciting, isn't it? Do you see it? So what we're saying is, there's a lot of people out there. There's genuinely, statistically speaking, I can prove it to you. There are a lot of people out there who are currently open to an experience or encounter with Jesus Christ. Not a spiritual, fluffy, floaty something. It's Jesus as well. I absolutely love this research because we're quite focused. So you can guarantee your churches that 36% of the people who've had a conversation are open to an experience or encounter. Is that not the most exciting statistic you've seen for a long time? And you'll find them when you start to go out and about. Because they want to experience Jesus. And you're like, oh, I'll tell you what, Easter's quite good for that. There's a whole pile of things that are good for that. Prayer stations, we do hope spaces. We've been looking at experience and encounter because some people will come that way. Then let's look at another set of slides. 35% felt more positive, 55% didn't, up towards Jesus. 41 felt closer to the person, 51% didn't. But look at this one, 33% wanted to know more about Jesus Christ. Remember, we're in this category here. So 33% wanted to know about Jesus and 36% wanted to experience. There's some overlap, but interestingly, not an entire overlap. So some people say, I want to know. That's how I'm going to come to faith. That's my piece in the journey. And some people go, I want to experience an encounter. We've noticed this a bit sometimes with, particularly with some of the couples who perhaps have come to faith in our church, that maybe one of them is more like, whoa, the experience. And the other one is like, oh, I don't know if I'm a Christian because I haven't had that. But actually what they've done is they've gone down a list and they've worked it out more from a black and white kind of point of view of whether Jesus is real or true. Does that make sense? So when you're doing evangelism and you're looking at how you're going to do mission, some people are going to do this through, they're going to go down more of an apologetics route. And for others, that isn't the route. They're going to go through, I want to experience this and encounter, and then I'll sort out the facts later. So you need both. It's not an either or. But often we can, in churches, even in churchmanship, we can fall into one camp or the other, one tribe or the other. Does that make sense? And what we need to do is realise that people are, of course they are, we're quite different. There's different ways we're going to come in. But that's the big headline, 1 in 3. Now, is that exciting? Do you know what it was in 2015? Can anyone remember? 1 in 5. That's why Thy Kingdom Come, you pray for 5 people. So we took the stat out into Thy Kingdom Come and we prayed for 5 people because one of them would be open. Now we do 1 in 3. Well, that's exciting, isn't it? So since 2015, more people now who are non-Christian want to know about Jesus or encounter him. I'm excited. And you've seen it. There is more openness than there was before. And that is the non-Christians. When you go to the non-practicing, you get up to 50%. So 50% of the non-practicing Christians who've had a conversation with a Christian want to know more about Jesus. So when you're looking at people who are those who've ticked that they're Christian, recognise that going to a local church would be a good place to go, which is 51% of the North. They are even more open to having another conversation with you or to an experience or encounter with Jesus. Did I just make your task a little bit easier? They're there. They're really, really there. They're not far away. Your harvest field is seriously on your doorstep, and it really is plentiful. Great. Where are we? What are we doing next? Okay, so everybody, what does everyone remember about the conversations? Look at this. We're doing quite well. People remembered that the person shared a personal story about their faith. These are the 2 big memories. And they asked me what I believe. 2 brilliant attributes that Christians are doing when they're sharing about their faith. They're sharing personally and they're listening to the other person. You couldn't ask for a better group of people. So this is the non-Christian's memory. This is a non-Christian telling us about that conversation. Isn't that exciting? So that tells us actually we've got lots of people who are doing this really well. So we still need to kind of talk about it and get ourselves sharing about these experiences, which is sort of what the Talking Jesus course does. But we shouldn't assume that people aren't doing this. They are. Okay, great. I'd love you to buzz in around your tables for a little bit on these questions. So how could this change the way Christians feel about witnessing? Who could you personally talk to? Where are the new spaces and places that people could connect post-pandemic? And what one thing could you do differently? So, how many of you came to faith before the age of 24? Please have a look round the room. Okay. How many people came to faith after the age of 24? There we are. Great. You would be statistically perfect. So there you are. That's just one of those things to remember. So we're going to have a little look about how all the influences to bring us to faith, but remember that age profile, and then we're going to have a little look at about the age at the impact of age. So we thought of every possible influence, and people could tick more than one, that might bring somebody to faith. This is a mighty whiz through. So, and they're all in the back of the book, so you're okay. Growing up in a Christian family is 34%. Now, interestingly enough, I expected that to be a bit higher, but it's 34% of us. Look at the number 2. Look at number 2. More Bible women, madness, everybody. These are one of the postcards, but reading the Bible comes in at number 2. So this makes me even more convinced that one of the things we should do is make sure everybody has access. This is our postcard that you can give out, and this goes to a digital version, the QR code to a digital version. Postcards, there we are. I'll get you some postcards. So this is a postcard with a digital version, so that if you don't, some people love that one and it's beautiful and they take it away, it's a treasure. but this is sometimes easier, particularly in your handbag, so that you've got something in your handbag to give to people who are interested. So reading the Bible. Then I love this one, attending a physical church service other than a wedding or a funeral. Any of you got anything to do with that? It just goes to show that what we do when we are doing church and being church together is extremely missional. And I don't know how many new people you get who flow in occasionally, but always remembering that there could be somebody there. So we just have got to get sharper and sharper at remembering. We are in a bit of a place where that does happen. I don't know whether it happens where you are, but looking to see if it does happen. Because if it does, you've got to, it's all the explanation that's required for someone who's never been in church before. Never assume anything. They haven't got a clue. They could have arrived from Mars. And therefore we need to, like when we're leading and hosting church, we need to try and help people understand what it is that we're doing together and give them that strong sense of invitation and welcome, that we're absolutely thrilled that they've arrived, because they do just arrive. Sunday school, you can see that when you look at that age demographic. A spiritual experience. I don't really know what I meant when I put that down on the list. But anyway, I put it on the list, and it's so fascinating that it's so high. And that's definitely, again, this is anecdote. I'm hearing more and more about spiritual experiences influencing people and bringing them into faith. And I expect you are, just on the grapevine. Of people having dreams or visions or something like that is bringing them in, and then they're coming to find out about it. Had a crazy story. We do this thing called Perspectives Conversations, which we do with the EA online, and we did it all about young adults. And we had someone from Fusion, and he was saying this guy, they were dressing up. It's one of the things they do. They go out to other countries. They all go out for the night and they dress up. And one of the guys had this big cross he was putting on. I can't remember which singer or person he thought he was. But as he put that cross around his neck, he had a deep spiritual experience that he'd never had before. And so when he got back into the UK, he met a Fusion worker on a campus, like handing things out and chatting. So I'm so glad I've met you. Are you from the church? Because I had this experience and I don't know what to do with it. And then he came to church. Don't you love it? God just does what God does, doesn't he? And he's so got a heart that he is on the move. And I think that's what that spiritual experience piece is. Conversations, I love it, with Christians that you knew well. A life event, whether positive or negative. Responding to the gospel at a Christmas Christian event or service. We need to give people the opportunity to say yes. And sometimes we just forget that. But we need to give people the opportunity to say yes. So we're trying to do that more in our services. You know, at Christmas and at Easter. And now their yes may be an affirmative actually to find out more, but let them have a chance to say yes. You know, if you want to come to, so if we have a call for different types of prayer ministry, make sure there's a call that if you want to find out more about Jesus, you can come and find out more about Jesus. Or we'll give you a copy of the life events of Jesus Christ. We'd love to give this to you if you want to find out more. But actually giving the people the chance to respond is really important. Yes.
Can I just interject? I know this is your thing.
That's right.
I'm networked with someone who works nationally. We often connect. And he reported that the largest church of one diocese, I won't mention the name of the Midlands diocese, but regularly has evening services where they give people a chance to respond. Yes. When I heard that, I thought, I couldn't work it out. But we need to hear that there are churches that are larger than others. There are churches that are growing, and there are churches that are doing just what we're saying, giving people an opportunity to say yes. I mean, it's a huge story. Yeah.
And if you had guests in at Easter, give them the chance. Give them the chance. Because they don't know that they don't know. So like some of these people particularly, like they've ticked that 51% who think they're Christian, they don't realise they need to do something. They're just going to come back next Easter. And they already believe a bit in the resurrection, and you try to convince them of that again, but they've got that far. What they haven't realised is there's an invitation for whole life transformation and the chance to join a community of people who are following the risen Jesus, who live out of that transformative power like Ephesians on a daily basis. Do you want to find out more? Oh, yeah, that sounds great. Do you see? So what are we offering? And giving people that chance to respond is really important. And when you do, it's actually really exciting. And if you don't get it, doesn't matter, but you've given it. And also, if you do it in church, people get used to hearing it and used to a level of expectation that people will come. So yeah, that's definitely happening. Attending a church school, if you've got anything to do with schools, look at that stat. Look at that stat. It means it is really worthwhile that you're in the school. One of our biggest, it's a growing church in one area in Tower Hamlets in Wapping. It's very high church, but the fathers are amazing, and they stand at the school gate every morning and they welcome every child into that school, into their parish school. They are part of the school. I can't believe that. But Father says that as the children come in, good morning, with the head master or headmistress is there, and so is the local parish father. They're really well known, and loads of those children and their families come to that church because what they've done is he's profiled himself as part of that church school and part of the community. And so he's growing an incredible group of families that are all joining his church. And it's a little weird bit. It does have a little bit of a village. I love it. And so he's known in the Bay. I've seen him chatting to the person in the greengrocers. He's known he was chatting away in the greengrocers was the other day, all about they'd had a baptism and so, and they brought all the cakes, and just this real sense of community that they have grown, and they're a high church who's doing a cracking job at mission, and he's at the school gate every morning. So what he's saying is, we are part of this. We still have that opportunity, and whilst we have it, we should really be maximising on it. So take the opportunity. I like visiting and praying in open church buildings. I call it low bar again. Just get the building open and let people visit and pray, because that can have an extraordinary effect. Dee Dias, who's now coming to work with you in the Northern Province, has done a lot on pilgrimage. We're going to do a lot more on pilgrimage for next year as well. But looking at the sense of pilgrimage, the people who walk into your church building, a lot of them aren't tourists. They are pilgrims. And we need to invite them to encounter the living God when they walk in through your church door. And lots of them are when we give them the invite. So just how can you do that? Creating a hope space, putting out prayer cards, making it a place of encounter. And then they'll come back to ask the questions, but many of them will come through encounter. And we have got, again, the Church of England has got a wealth on this one of getting them open and allowing people to encounter Jesus. So I love it. Again, not too difficult. Youth Club, Christian printed media. Well, we're into that in all many ways. This is a Christmas book that I wrote all about Christmas, just helping anybody understand the Christmas story, not taking it for granted, with a prayer at the back. One church, it's a big Baptist church, wrote to me and he said, I didn't actually get a copy for myself because so many went out of the door, and then the non-Christian families were coming back to the church in the week to ask for another copy because they'd given their copy to one of their friends. So he said, I didn't even get a copy. So he said, I've had to order so many more. I'm going to have so many more this Christmas because we just didn't have enough for the demand. And that's because, again, it's just it's one of our easy opportunities. And particularly for those people who are somewhat with us, they desperately want to be able to actually read. They actually do want to read to their child the meaning of Christmas. And they don't feel skilled or tooled up to do it themselves. So when you give them something that helps them to do that, they're really excited that they can sit with it. I imagine some of these will go in that Christmas decoration box and come out every year. And we know that we get unprecedented numbers at Christmas. But right at the back, there's a beautiful prayer that they can pray so they can actually have an experience as well. So again, might be a diocesan thing that you can, because it comes easier. But that's exciting. So we are into printed media. It does help if it looks beautiful, particularly. Conversations with Christians you didn't know well. This is us standing on the street and or going door to door. There's a lot of growth in people going door to door and being really positively well received, especially if you're from the local church. Hello, we've come from the local church. We just want to know how you are doing. We know it's a really difficult time. Is there anything we can pray for you about? Do you know what? I guarantee you there'll be loads of people who say, that's wonderful, thank you so much, would you pray for this? Some will say, no, thank you, I don't want to know. We also have this little booklet that's really good for that, Hope in Hard Times. It's just a really beautiful little giveaway. So if someone said, yes, I'm really struggling, you can pray for them and you can leave them something and say, you're really welcome. We're at church. I'm at church every this time, please come. But I'll be praying for you. And you can even we've got this app so that you can actually mark the streets that you've visited. But as a team, no, if somebody was positive, you need to write it down and you can go back, can't you? I prayed for so-and-so. I need to go back in 3 weeks' time and see how they're doing. So again, all of those go together. And this is, I know I think you've already got a prayer walking app, haven't you?
You sure?
Yeah. Well, this is also, again, lots of them. Choose one. It really helps because it encourages people, because you can mark all your streets that everybody's prayed for and gone door to door. Where were we? There you are. Christianity Explored and Alpha, 6%. Attending online church services, 6%. Think how long we've been doing online services. Not that long. So that's had a really big impact in a really short space of time. Content on social media. Church weddings and funerals, you know how important they are. Christian Union, do you know what? 2% other. I quite like that we only got 2% other. So basically, we did think of most of the ways that I now want to know what that 2% is. Well, how did you come to faith? What happened? Something really random. But you can see some of the biggies. Then we asked about age. Look at that. What does that tell you for your church strategy? It tells you something about all the work you do with younger generations is so vitally important. Now, it's not that older people don't come to faith. There's two messages on this slide. One is that every kids club you run is extraordinarily valuable. The other is, though, that people of all ages can come to faith. Okay? So there's two messages in this slide. One is that when you look strategically at resourcing, you need to, actually working with an after-school club is extremely important. Yet at the same time, people of all age can come to faith. Does that make sense? So if you're choosing where you've got limited resource, that should help you know where to steer it. But at the same time, people of all age will come to faith. So what we did is we broke out the top influences that bring an over 18-year-old to faith and look at number one. This is why since 2015, we have more openness in 2022, because we've all been through collective life events. The pandemic was a collective traumatic life event that impacted everybody at the same time. That's why more people are open right now. We're going through an economic crisis. It's a life event that's impacting a lot of people. There's a war. It's an impact, a life event. When someone gives birth, it's a life event. When somebody in their family dies, it's a life event. At those moments, we have real openness for the gospel. And that's why right now there's more openness in our society and we need to go for it. And then, so looking at the life events, what do you have? So I don't know if you know the bereavement journey. That's a really good tool that's seen people come to faith. It deals with bereavement for 5 to 6 weeks, and then there's an optional faith end week that everybody comes to. Nobody has yet not come to the optional faith week at the end. But they go through classic counselling on bereavement as a skills and tools to help them, and then they look at faith at the end of it. Then you can see Christian family is still really important. Church services, spiritual experience, reading the Bible, conversations, responding to the gospel, Christian printed media. So this is more of an adult. This is where adults in particular, they are some of the things that we need to look at to help adults come to faith. Right, I'm going to throw in my one random slide because I can't help myself. This is a slide from another piece of research called Talking Toddlers. This particularly addresses that age demographic. 74% of all of the parents with a child under the age of 5 are in touch with what organisation? The church. So the biggest reach that we have in the UK is to this age demographic. So we, as the Church of Jesus Christ, could help every under 5-year-old have a living, true experience of the living God. We could help them to learn to pray, and we could help them to know who Jesus is. And we've got 74% reach. If we were a company, we would be like, my word, ecstatic. So we just need to be really distinctively Christian in those spaces. So we work with the Entertainer Toy Store now, Tory and Happy Land characters, because these are characters for that age bracket. So you can have a look at those. We do books, animation and song to help this age bracket find out more. It goes through the whole of God's big story from creation through to Revelation is what we're working on. And if you have got a toddler group in your church, it's one of your biggest places of mission. But you can bring those people to faith. 55% of the adults who go along to one of these events have examined faith for themselves as being there. And couldn't we help every under 3-year-old, every 3-year-old have a living experience of Jesus? I knew Jesus when I was 3. I probably knew him before. But as I grew to walk and talk, that's how I came to faith. I talked to Jesus just as much as I talked to everybody else. I sang to him just as much as I sang about everything else. So it was always there. And actually, that is the opportunity we have in an unprecedented number. Of the 25% there who are not in touch, a third want an invite. A third of that 25% would love to come to the church for something put on for that age bracket. So it tells you something, again, there's something culturally interesting going on here. The people who have children are culturally close to church. Does that make sense? And we have an extraordinary opportunity. So strategically, if you don't run a toddler group, it's a great place to start, or a messy church, or bubble church, or all the other varieties and numerous forms and ways that we have thought up of as church to do something for this age bracket. So we do a Talking Toddler webinar that happens 3 times a year. We'd love you to join up with that. These are resources for that. That is our Mark's Gospel, like Luke. This is our Talking Jesus course. I don't know why it would play as a trailer, but we're not going to bother. Oh, you don't need the trailer. We haven't got time for the trailer. But that's about talking about your faith. This is where you can download the report. You can have another paper copy. If you don't know much about Hope, which is if you've got your little red card, you can find everything about us on hopetogether.org.uk. That's our website. And this is our e-news. It's just really simple. You don't have to read it every month or whenever we send one out, but at least then you'll stay in touch with what we're up to. So if you want resources, ideas, encouragement, inspiration on reaching people, then at least if you're part of that, you can dip in and out and you can find us and see what we're up to. So that's on this little card. And we would love to stay in touch with you. And I think this is our wellbeing course. This is really good for people who are again a bit further away. It goes through felt needs, but from a Christian perspective. And then one of the sessions is on spiritual well-being. But that has gone really, really well in lots of community spaces. So you could run that in, I don't know, in your coffee shop. You can run it in your church. We've had really rave reviews of people running in church and people coming because at the moment well-being is a need. So you might want to have a look at that. But I guess the big thing is stay in touch, because what we want to do is help you to do what you want to do. And we absolutely know that the harvest is plentiful. We absolutely know it. And I have that joy of sometimes being on a train, and I gave out one of these. I was on the train. I told this story last night, but I do love it. I'm on the train and going from one place to another place, and this family gets on the train, and I've got this in my suitcase, and I know statistically that they are really open because I know that's true. But even still then, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to be that weird Bible woman. But in the end, I pull this out and I go, look, I just wondered if your little girl would like a copy of our Noah's Ark book. It's a story from the Bible. Oh, that would be lovely. So I read this all to Tinkerbell. We look through at the splashes of mud and the penguins and everything. And I read to their little daughter. And the father looks at me and he goes, it's just so strange that we should meet you on a train today, because 2 weeks ago, for the first time as a family, we went to church. He said, we've never been to church. We haven't really ever done church. But I got to thinking that once we had a child, I got to thinking that there could be a God. And if there was a God and I didn't really know, I didn't want my daughter to miss out. So I thought I'd try church. And now we've met you. And I was like, oh, Lord, that is amazing, isn't it? Isn't that worth it? Worth that little bit of risk? Would you like a Noah's Ark book? And so every time, it's just so amazing when God opens a door. And so we had a cracking conversation all about, and he said, the pandemic had made him think all these different, he was statistically perfect. But you know what?
So it's...
I know, yeah. Yeah, but let's get that correct. That could go terribly wrong, couldn't it? Yes, you fit my research. Yes. But it's going well. Yeah, it's according to the video, statistically perfect. Yes, never mind. God rushes the world. But it's such a joy to give things out, isn't it? In the right place and content, and discover that actually so many people are open. And they did just walk into a church, and I was like, oh my word, I wonder how that experience was. And he goes, oh, my little girl, she does whoop after every song, because that's what they do in nursery. They've been taught to go whoop after every song. And so after every song, she went whoop in church. And I was like, oh my word, I wonder how that went. He said, they seem to cope very well. I'm like, oh my word. But I'm like, yeah, go back to church. Go back to church. That's amazing. Let your daughter, let's try to explain why it's so positive for her to be brought up within that context. So the message is the harvest is plentiful. And Jesus was correct. He normally is. Let me pray for you. Lord God, thank you so much that the harvest is plentiful. We pray that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you will help us, your harvesters, to be confident, to be courageous, to speak, to give, to reach out, to always be aware of the new person who walks into our midst. Lord, give us the time in our busy lives to be able to engage with those who don't yet know you. Make it a beating part of who we are. May we be passionate about it. Holy Spirit, will you work in our lives that we might bring many, many people into the family? Lord, we want to stand before you when we get to glory with the people that have come to faith because we stepped out. Help us. Give us our eyes that see, ears that hear, a heart that has such a passion it won't stop for those who don't yet know you. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen.